Good morning. We're going to get started in a moment. We have a few more people who are just logging in, and then we'll get things kicked off. All right, looks like we're ready to go here. So first, I want to welcome everybody to the first in a series of Ask the Experts webinars presented by Outer Reef Yachts. I'm Mike Schlichtig, the General Manager at Outer Reef, and the goal of our webinars is to really give prospective owners an in-depth look into Outer Reef Yachts and all that we have to offer. Keep in mind this is meant to be an interactive experience, so please ask questions. There should be a little box on the right-hand side of your screen. Simply type in your questions, they'll pop up, and we'll get to them as quickly as we can. Here at Outer Reef, we're obviously committed to the safety of our staff and our prospective owners, so we're doing this remotely live. We can also arrange one-on-one showings, as well as doing virtual tours and things like that. Today, we have joining us Jeff Druick, who is the founder and president of Outer Reef Yachts. We have Joel Davidson, who is a sales associate with over 30 years experience in the industry. And we're also joined by Trevor DeFoicha. He is our managing director of our European office. So today we're going to talk about a few things. We'll talk about why Outer Reef was created, what gaps that we saw in the market 18 years ago that we felt needed to be filled. We'll also go over the company's family philosophy, some of the specialty innovative features that Outer Reef has pioneered, really aimed at the owner-operator, as well as going over some of our goals and a little bit of the mission statement that you wanted the company to fulfill moving forward. Jeff?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike, your audio was a little delayed there. Again, welcome everybody, as Mike said, to the first webinar series. Many of you know me, many of you met myself and many other of the panelists here at boat shows throughout the years. And for those who aren't familiar with our companies, we do a little bit of a rundown of how we started, our philosophy, our mission statement, and how we got to where we are today. I was a retail customer 23, 24 years ago to who is now one of our head-to-head competition, happened to be a Fleming. I went to them 23 years ago to have them build me a boat. And unfortunately, they had the same philosophy as Henry Ford. You can have any color you want as long as it's black, which was disheartening to me. Being a custom builder all my life, I felt the need after that experience to offer to the buying public a yacht that they wanted. And that was basically the inception of Outer Reef Yachts, was to build specifically what a client was looking for, with no holds barred. And to this day, that philosophy rings true to every build that we do. And that led into our mission statement. Our mission statement was to be not the biggest company, but in my mind, the best company. And to really build a close-knit group of owners that shared the same dream, that shared the same desires in the design of a boat, and bringing to fruition what exactly they want and not what the boat manufacturer was willing to get, was offering. Again, it's basically, whatever you want, we can build, and it's always been a philosophy. You may have spoken to many of our owners at some shows or read on our website our testimonials. There's very few things that we say no to when you're designing and building an Outer Reef, and to this day, that philosophy rings true, and I think it's the hallmark of our success to this day.
All right, Jeff. Joel, this would be a little bit of a two-part question, but Outer Reef was designed to be a safe, secure, long-range offshore cruising vessel. Can you give us some of the features that make that boat such a good cruising yacht for that purpose? And maybe at the same time, Joel, we got a question from a gentleman who's asking us, and this is a good time, I think, to go into it, is some of the differences between Fleming, Marlowe, and maybe some of the other companies that are in our our competition, and that came from one of the viewers.
Okay, great, Mike. Thanks, and thanks for everyone attending. I've fortunately had the pleasure of working with a large number of purchasers of both new and pre-owned outer reefs from 58 feet to 90 feet, and so the stability of the Outer Reef series, both at anchor or in severe weather situations, was essentially a predetermined result of a combination of factors that included a very substantial hull lamination schedule. And in addition, the hull from the main deck to the waterline shows essentially very marginal difference in the beam. And so this, as well as the very full deep keel, provides protection for the propellers and handling, is assisted by also very large rudders. I can remember specific sea trials where clients were about to move forward with the purchase of a similar sister ship, a similar profile sister ship as an example, but they just were in awe of the stability of the Outer Reef that they were on board, whether it was at an anchorage or in heavy swells, and in some very disturbed seas. So going to your question, many of these purchasers had substantial experience with full displacement yachts like Nordhavens, Northern Marines, Selines, or planing yachts like Sunseekers or Burgers or Hatterases or Marlows, and others had similar hull design to our series like Flemings or Ocean Alexanders, Offshores, Horizons, and Hargraves. Generally, the purchasers from full displacement yachts wanted a yacht with less draft and better stability at anchor, equal or better fuel consumption, and a higher top speed when required, which they couldn't get in their full displacement yacht. The owners of the planing yachts wanted greater stability, and there's a huge difference in volume and storage of our series in comparison to a planing yacht of similar length. The owners of semi-displacement yachts, like they wanted to have more volume, stability, storage, and increased range. Some of our owners had as much as 30 or 40 years experience with a multitude of vessels, and others did not, but ultimately their goals led them to the purchase of an Outer Reef. In addition, the fuel economy of our yachts at hull speeds is truly exceptional. And as a result, for instance, I've had clients go from Alaska to Cape Horn or from Fort Lauderdale through the Panama Canal up to Los Angeles. So, and they had very limited stops for fuel. Things like stabilizers are certainly standard on all the Outer Reef series. We pride ourselves on having stand-up engine rooms so that our owners can maintain their vessels, and many of our owners run yachts in the 70 to 80 foot range and don't require crew because of all the systems on board. So the other thing is that I've had personally owners who are now on their fourth Outer Reef because of the extremely high retention of value in resale, because we don't have an extra profit dealer network and other things. So anyway, a lot of people have been led towards us, and certainly we have accolades and comments from many owners who've had previous yachts just about the tremendous stability of the Outer Reef series.
Yeah, and I think going back to some of the philosophy, the fact that they can have their own version of their boat, not our version, meaning they can customize their interior, their decor, their layout, I think is also unique in the industry. There's just not many people who will customize an interior boat the way that we do.
Yeah, Mike, I think that question was for me. Your audio was a little broken up, but I think I got the question as far as the customization. Yes, everything from the original pen on paper, which is really AutoCAD, which I draw every boat for our clients, all the way through the design session is all done in-house. Interior design is not is not subcontracted out. It's done by an in-house designer on payroll, and it's a value play in that every penny spent in your decor is spent on product and not on time of the designer. And that is something that gets very expensive in a lot of boats if they are willing to do custom interiors. You're paying by the hour for the designer, and it very quickly eats away your decor allowance. Whereas we brought that in-house as a value play to give the best value to the client. And I know Joel hit on it a little bit further before from a value play standpoint. And part of our business philosophy when we started this was to give the best value to the client. And we found the only way to give the best value to the client was to build a factory direct business model. Outer Reef today has no dealers, has never had a dealer. So that profit center that's built into most dealer business models is that value we put into the boat. So, and again, with a factory direct model and dealing with Outer Reef, that will allow you that customization. I cannot see, or I don't know of any dealer business models that can accommodate the customization that we can do, because they're usually buying an inventory style boat with a few possible modifications. Our business model allows for this dramatic flexibility and design throughout the process. I hope that answers the question, Mike. I don't know if that was from a panelist or from you. As I said, the audio was grainy there.
Yeah, that was from one of the people who were listening. Trevor, Outer Reef Yacht as a global company, we've delivered boats into South America, Europe, Australia. Can you give us a little bit of the European perspective on the Outer Reef design and just kind of follow up with some of the points that have been talked about?
Yeah, sure, Mike. Thank you very much, and welcome to our European listeners who might be online with us. Basically, a lot of the issues we've had in the past with long-range cruising in the Mediterranean has been the yachts that were available are very mission specific. So generally speaking, you were looking at a full displacement hull, whether it had been a Nordhaven or a Celine or of that ilk, with the odd smattering of a sort of semi-displacement as well. But the ability to actually buy a yacht in the Med or anywhere in Europe that was capable of doing long range, but also have a lot of the abilities of a Mediterranean style boat just didn't exist. So what we have found in Europe, while people appreciate the strength of the Outer Reefs and the ability to go ocean crossing and all that long range that they might want to do at some point, many of their biggest issues was the fact that what was available just didn't give a Mediterranean style experience. So they were very low on sort of deck space. There wasn't that much outdoor space. If they were full displacement, they had 3 decks and a lot of staircases up and down, and also, as Jeff alluded to, very little customization. So what we've found is that the people coming to us, and the clients that we now have, our fleet is obviously growing every year. When they've done their kind of due diligence and they've looked around and they're looking for something that's going to be very safe for them, their family, is going to give them the Mediterranean style experience, or even North Europe for that matter. They want something that's going to fulfill those aspirations they have. And the Outer Reef, if we look at its comparable foot by foot length to anything in the planing market or even in the full displacement, actually has the largest outdoor deck spaces of anything in our size categories. So for example, our flybridges are almost in some cases 50% bigger than anything you would buy from a production boat. The aft decks generally are the same beam as the rest of the vessel, so you get a lot of space on the aft deck. They can have options of hydraulic swim platforms. Even the foredeck spaces are much bigger than you generally find on a planing boat. So overall, the experience for somebody who's been through the planing boat market and perhaps have even had a displacement boat, when they get onto an Outer Reef, they're absolutely amazed at the volume of the external spaces, which, in all honesty, when you're med cruising, is generally where you want to be. not inside the boat, although it's obviously got large volume inside as well. But the vast majority during the day, you're cruising, you want to be out there enjoying the weather and out enjoying the ocean. And the Outer Reef just surpasses everything else that's out there. And then you have the upside as well when you're comparing against some of the playing boat market is the range that the boat has. And it's not necessarily that you particularly want to do 1,000 miles or 2,000 miles in one hit. What you're looking for is somewhere or something that can get you during your holiday period for a week or 2 weeks to all the destinations you want to go without having to, line up at the fuel dock. Which is a big problem a lot of the time in the particularly high season, because you're constantly with a range of only 250 miles at the fuel dock, waiting for hours at times to try and get a slot. Whereas with the Outer Reef, up to 2,500, even 3,000 nautical mile range if you wish, which means for those 2 weeks you can sail from Antibes to perhaps maybe down to Sardinia to Malta back to Gibraltar, and again back to Antibes, and you never have to pull into a fuel dock, which is a big bonus for a lot of owners. And that tends to be some of the items that people like about the Outer Reef and why they're turning more to us than they have done in the past. And the other advantage as well is that, of course, as Joel alluded to, is residual values. I think a lot of our customers obviously do their due diligence. They understand that it's a huge investment, and they're looking on the second-hand market. They're checking out what these boats are going to be worth 10 years down the line, and historically and into the future, it's the same. The Outer Reefs generally are probably the highest residuals in the market. As they always say, that the best deal you do is not the day you bought it, but it's the actual day that you sold it. And on that Pacific, we are just far ahead of the competition. So those are some of the issues. And one of the other things I could say also with regards to the med market is that, even at yachts at 60 feet, it is a prerequisite that there's some kind of crew accommodation. So all our boats from 60 feet onwards all have the ability to have a very large lazarette, or you can have a full-size crew room with ensuite facilities. And that's a big bonus as well for a boat of that size if you're looking at the 60-foot market and upwards. So they're just some of the key features that we've come across here in the Med.
Thank you, Trevor. We had a follow-up question on some comparisons between ourselves and some of the other boats. Again, they were specifically asking about Marlowe and Fleming. And I would think if we start with Marlowe, if we look from the mission that the boats were designed for, I think they're very different. The majority of the Marlows are planing hulls. If you've ever seen one out of the water, there's no keel. They have lifting strakes. They are resin-infused boats. Not that there's anything wrong with resin infusion. It creates a very, very strong panel. But they are really designed to be a faster, more efficient boat, in the upper teens to low 20s. And with that, you will end up sacrificing some seakeeping when sea conditions don't allow you to zip across the ocean at 21 or 22 knots. There's an old saying in the boat industry that there's no replacement for displacement. And that's a very true statement. And some of the more true long-range cruising yachts that are solid fiberglass hulls definitely have the ability to absorb the impact of the heavy seas and oceans and be a much more comfortable ride. And so I think if you ever saw the two boats out of the water, even as a novice, not being a naval architect, I think you'd see very clearly that the mission that the two hulls were designed to do are very, very different. And again, the customization is another big thing. The Fleming, they've got some limitations that we sought to improve upon when we designed the boat. Things like a much larger fly bridge, much better access to engine room, and some things like that. They're price prohibitive, we believe. They're very proud of their boats and they charge accordingly. But there are some very substantial differences in the construction and the design of the boats. That question came from Brett. Just shoot us a quick note and let us know if that was enough detail for you. That kind of leads us into Outer Reef being kind of on the edge of the industry in innovation. We were the first company to do digital owner's manual within everything on iPads. We were one of the first to do internet portals to allow our owners to get on the internet and look up their owner's manual. We used Wheelhouse technology, which is a great tool for maintenance on the boat and keeping track of records. Things like C-Torx, which is an enclosed shaft system, which reduces drag and creates efficiencies. Jeff, why don't you go into a little bit about some of the evolutions on the interiors, particularly starting that 2010 market where we started seeing the more open layouts as opposed to the traditional raised pilot house where they were closed off?
Oh, that was directly, Mike, an attempt to broaden our demographic. When we started Outer Reef Yachts, it's almost 20 years ago now, the average age of our client was between 68 and 70 years old. Today, the average age is 58 years old. We have some clients in their 40s, and that I attribute directly to the design of the product, a more open layout, which really lends itself to a younger clientele. Much more modern interiors. We had a client that came out of a Lazara, and he wanted us to duplicate the inside of his Lazara, of which we did. You can see that on our website. So there are no limitations to what we can do from a design standpoint. And we found that flexibility in design, the openness in the space, the more friendly and inviting exterior living spaces, such as our new bridge view deck, as an example. If you're not familiar, you can go on our website and look at that, has driven the market or is driving our market to a younger demographic. And I don't see our competition doing that. A lot of our competition is laden with heavy woods and teak and holly floors and teak, whereas we've lightened our interiors, more wall coverings, Magilite panelings, acoustic walls. Again, whatever really the client is looking for, and we've embraced that transition in design to follow the demographic. And again, it's the average age of our client has dropped about 15 years since the inception of the company. I think that's pretty dramatic for our styling of boat.
Jeff, I think one of the really cool things that we were the first to do is that rising wall to bridge that gap between an open layout, family-oriented cruising, and the diehard guys who will cruise at night, who wanted that segregated wheelhouse to keep it nice and dark and isolated. And we started doing that, I think, on a 70 in 2010, and it's been really
almost 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a design concept of looking for the best of both worlds from the mission of our yachts are long-range cruisers, and the long-range cruisers cruise at night, many times at night, overnight passages, and to have that open feeling and that wide open social space during the day, and to have a dedicated pilot house at night, that's what drove the design of that integrated removable wall in the pilot house. So again, it was that design, and many other designs are designed out of desires and listening to people, listening to what our clients want. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, majority of these improvements come from our clients. We listen, and that's the key to Outer Reef. We listen. We don't dictate. And somebody has a great idea in design, we say, why not? Let's see if we can do it.
Jeff, we have a question from a gentleman named Greg. Greg says he had a similar background to yours, and the customization is one of the things that really has gotten his interest into Outer Reef. Not having a ton of boat experience, his question is, what do we offer in terms of owner-operators and support for people who have not owned a bigger boat? And so to Greg, just to give you a little bit of a rundown on that. So part of our standard commissioning process, we offer training from Captain Randy Ives. Randy's got 45 years experience. He's done multiple transatlantic trips and multiple trips to the shipyard. And part of our standard operating procedure is training and service. We understand that not everybody comes from a background and or is familiar with our equipment. So we spend quite a bit of time doing orientations. We basically start at the bow on the lower deck, and we go under the V-berth, and we start looking at all of the equipment, and we start explaining how all of those systems work. And we literally spend days going through the whole boat. We also do training on the water. We'll help you with docking procedures, with line handling, with anchoring, and things like that. Jeff, one of the innovations that you really pushed, and again was geared mostly towards owner-operators and people like Greg, are the QR codes that take people to our website for their specific owner's manual and our video series. Can you expand a little bit on those programs and just how beneficial they are for owners to be able to get some quick, easy access to information?
Sure, Mike. This goes back from the inception of when we pioneered the first iPad owner's manual for our series, which is linked into Wheelhouse Technologies, which is basically our online owner's manual. And I know a lot of our I should say a lot. Some of our clients are weekend warriors. They may not live aboard full time, or they'll cruise once a month, or they'll come down on the weekends and use their boat. And a lot of the equipment on board, such as starting up a water maker or shutting down a water maker, if you're not using it every day, you tend to forget how to use it. So what we did is on all the critical pieces of equipment throughout the boat, such as a water maker, fuel transfer pumps, fuel polishing systems, or raw water backup pumps, we put a QR code on that piece of equipment. So there's no need to scroll through a paper manual, no need to go on to the Wheelhouse Technologies to look up that piece of equipment. You just take your smartphone or tablet and scan it on a QR code, which is literally placed on that piece of equipment, and it brings you directly to the page in your manual to explain how to use that piece of equipment. And it's basically a user-friendly piece of equipment that makes your life much easier, much simpler. Those are some of the innovative things that we've done over the years from a user-friendly standpoint that seems to be working very, very well.
And then there's always the good old-fashioned pick up the phone and give us a call. We've got portals that each owner can log into if they have requests for information, they need to order a part. Captain Randy always picks up his phone. So we're always readily available. Joel, a follow-up question from one of the viewers. He'd like to get a little bit
Mike,
more.
let me just elaborate a little bit on that. Outer Reef Yachts is a very, very accessible company. Everyone within the company is accessible 24/7. Bottom of my email has my cell phone in it. You can call me 24/7. We understand that when people are on their boats and are looking to cruise, this is their, whether it be a month vacation or a weekend, we understand that is prime time for them. And the last thing we want is them to come to their boat, they can't get something started, or they run into a problem. Everyone in Outer Reef, from upper management to lower management, is available 24/7. That is part of our philosophy within Outer Reef Yachts, is accessibility.
Thanks, Jeff. Joel, one of the follow-up questions that we got was on resale value. We're building expensive boats. It's an expensive hobby to get into. There's that general conception that boats are just depreciating left and right, and a lot of them do. Can you give a little history on our resale values, both from boats that are a year old, which is typically one of the toughest times to sell, to boats that have resold, numerous times? Because it's a great question. It should be on the forefront of everybody's mind, and our track record is absolutely outstanding on this front. So maybe you can share a few examples of real-world examples of that.
Well, to me, resale value has always been the most critical aspect of a yacht purchase. Of course, meeting the needs of the client, and I've had myself a number of vessels, and so when I look even at a brokerage yacht, I'm looking at what can it sell for in the next 4 years. because people's life changes. If I can't see about 85 to 90%, I really can't recommend that vessel. And the thing about Outer Reefs, and even recent past experiences, we have had a client that built a 70 with us, used it for a year. He definitely wanted to build a larger yacht. He's had burgers, he's had Northern Marines, and I sold his boat essentially in December for substantially more than he paid for it. And part of that is there's no inventory, there's no product. So, you know, essentially demand, if there's no product, then the value stays high. You combine that with the fact that we don't have a dealer network, and that we also offer substantial discounts or for limited boat show use. So that the client wins and we win. And take another example. In February, I sold a 2013 70, and that sold for, again, more money as a pre-owned boat than when it sold for in 2016. We had a closing 2 or 3 days ago, and Randy went up and of course spent some time with the owner. And when I look at that, that's a 2008 vessel, sold for 75% of its original purchase price. Now, part of this is that when you order a yacht from us, you're essentially, in a lot of cases, let's say someone orders a vessel today, we have full production going on. Wonderful thing about Taiwan in this whole coronavirus scenario is they're literally unaffected. 25 million people, 6 deaths. So the production is working well. I had a sea trial, which I couldn't attend, unfortunately, because of the airline situation. But that yacht never changed its production schedule, and it's going on a ship in about 2 weeks. So, and I look at clients that, one of my clients is in his 4th Outer Reef. I sold his first yacht for 91% of what he paid for it 5 years after he owned it. His second, that was a bigger boat, that was an 80. Then he went to a 70. I sold it for more than he paid for it. He built another vessel and actually ended up selling that to a friend of his, and then built another boat. So people don't do this, especially someone as educated as this particular client who had yachts up to 130 feet. And so one of the really wonderful things about being involved with Outer Reefs is that I can look someone in the eye and I can say, look, if something changes in your life, you're not going to take such huge equity hit that you would in a production boat. I mean, really, you can go to a boat show and you can close your eyes and point at any production boat and know that after 4 years, you'd be lucky to get 55 or 60%. Rather, with an Outer Reef, you're in the 90% range. So that's the most critical aspect. And one of the things that I really enjoy and certainly motivates me to sell more Outer Reefs, because I'm happy that my clients are not going to get hurt when something changes in their lives. And sometimes it's a health situation. Sometimes they say, oh, hey, we want to go mountain climbing. We want to do something. I don't want them to suffer. I want them to have the highest retention of equity that they can. And we have all the sales results to prove that.
And I think on top of that, Joel, the structure of the company being very lean, we're very vertically integrated. We haven't really experienced a situation where things have been to the point where we've had to discount our boats any different. Even say in 2008, 2009, the U.S. was quite devastated at that point in time, but our production stayed up because we were getting great orders out of Australia and out of Europe when the euro was getting stronger and the Australian dollar went from 73 cents to almost par. We were still able to keep our pricing up without offering steep discounts because of being a global company. So we never really have seen those big dips, which again goes to upward pressure on the value of the boats, which is very real part of our business plan.
Mike, if I can elaborate one thing, and I know there's questions sitting in the background, but I think there's a very important part of our resale value that I think needs to be elaborated. Your resale value is directly related to your brokerage boats, obviously. We at Outer Reef maintain 98% of every brokerage Outer Reef that comes back on the market. There's the occasional boat that where the original purchaser came in with an outside broker and he has a relationship with him. And when he sells the boat, he goes with his outside broker and lists the boat for sale. But pretty much so, 98% of every boat that we build, we get back on resale. And we can control that resale market, which begs the question, how do we get back 98% of our product that we build on resale? It's typical in the business, and you'll see other manufacturers, they control maybe 50% of their resales. Why? It's how you're treated as an owner of Outer Reef. If you're an Outer Reef purchaser, you're treated very well, and they do come back to us. We don't sell off their boat, but I think it's a direct correlation of the relationship process throughout the ownership history of that vessel is why those boats come back to us on resale. And you treat your customers right, they come back. You control your resale market, which controls your resale value. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Thanks, Jeff. Brett made a comment that that's much better than the market doing in the stock market. And in 2007, we had sold a 73. And during the build process, obviously, the economic troubles in 2008 happened. And he had made that same comment. Brett said it was the best investment he had ever made at that point in time. Jeff, do you have a schedule on when the 90 is going to ship? We did have a question from Glenn, one of the guys looking, who's listening in, is wondering when that new 90 is going to be available to be shown.
That 90 will be coming out of the mold shortly, and I'd say it's probably about another year in production. So I would say roughly a year, 14 months from now, the 90 will be here.
Okay. One of the other questions that came in from a gentleman says, we use a lot of gear, diving, sports, and things like that. What kind of storage is available on Outer Reefs for equipment like that? Jeff, we've done some pretty interesting things in the past. Can you give us just a few examples of some of the customizations we've done for things like dive tanks, fishing, and so forth?
Well, yeah. Getting back to the inception of the project, when we sit down with the clients and we actually start putting mouse to AutoCAD rather than pen to paper, we sit down and talk about how they're gonna use the boat, how they're gonna live, what kind of lifestyle they have, and we design and build around that lifestyle. In many boats, we built exterior dive lockers with compressors and places for kite boards, and we had a client up in the Pacific Northwest had a specific bait tank that had to have a different level in circulation water for his Dungeness crabs, and then his bait has to be in a different level above that with a different circulation pump. I mean, right down to the circulation flow for his bait fish. I mean, it's pretty bizarre the lengths that we go through to accommodate clients' needs. But yes, we've done many things for clients. The boat that we rounded Cape Horn on, that was strictly set up for diving and exploration. Dive compressors, cooling tanks for his tanks, and wet lockers for his wetsuits, and for his BCs, and it was right down to the hook for each piece of equipment. So yes, we dig deep into the weeds once the initial design is done, and then we design and redesign and redesign.
Trevor, another question came in, which we hear all the time, is the ride of the boat. I know you've done multiple deliveries in your career. You represent a lot of different boats. Can you give a little insight into the ride of the boat and some of your experience in terms of some of the heavier seas? I know you've had a couple of interesting deliveries over in Europe.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, it is a very valid point that when we look at the clients that we are selling to and how they're using their boats, the initial idea is that nobody wants to be out in very rough weather. Obviously, there's no joy in that. But the upside in terms of Outer Reef and the way the hulls have been designed with a very deep forefoot and a nice flared bow. Maybe they're a little narrow in the VIP because you're getting that very pointy section of the boat head to weather. Is their ability to ride out some very significant weather very comfortably and without any fear of anything going wrong. And my own experience, I've delivered everything from 40-foot planing sport cruisers, or express cruisers as you call them in the States, all the way up to 80, 90-foot, everything you can imagine. And one of the things that I've always found in terms of, I was relating myself in terms of, I'm taking this boat as an owner, and a lot of owners' time is fairly limited. When you're being paid as a captain or whatever, it's no problem to spend 2 days here in port, or to have to pull in. But from an owner's perspective, that's very inconvenient, and obviously you're losing a lot of valuable time. And I often found when I was delivering anything in the planing market, even up to 80 feet, certainly in North Europe, up along the sort of the North Sea area, or up towards Scandinavia, or even down on the East Coast, going down, from France and down to Spain, is you spend a lot of time, weather watching, which is obviously, a natural thing to do, but you're planning all the time that I'm not going to get across this bay on Tuesday. So we're here for 2 days, and you're not going to get from here to the next leg, because again, incoming weather, and that weather may not be particularly bad. But with the Outer Reef, it's simply, as long as the weather conditions are well within the capabilities of the boat, you just keep going. So it's a bit of a sort of a hare and tortoise thing. You may have a 5,000 pound horsepower planing hull thinking it can do 25 knots, but the reality of it is, when we look at even competitors, how they monitor the use of their boats, a lot of the time they're not cruising at those kind of speeds, because it's simply just not possible. And that even applies to the Med. You can get some quite severe weather. So the point of having a very high speed, high powered planing hull, often you're just not getting any use from it, or what it was intended for, because it's just not capable of getting through those weather conditions. And I can remember the first delivery I did for Outer Reef was from Rosyth in Scotland all the way down to Southampton in the middle of winter. And we got fairly good forecasts, but the reality was, of course, the forecasting wasn't that good back then, and we hit a lot of significant weather. It was blowing 45, 50 knots of wind against tide, a 3 and 4 knot tide, and we had some very substantial kind of wave patterns that would have pretty much put most boats into port, or had you turn around. But we just kept going, and I could honestly say the way the boat ran, it was just super quiet inside. We obviously had the pitching motion, which wasn't particularly bad, because you had that very pointy bow section, which was just cutting through the water. And at no time did you ever feel there was any issues, or you were any concerns or whatever. The boat was just rock solid. And we get that back from a lot of owners who sometimes accidentally find themselves in the wrong conditions, and they never wanted to be there. But they report back, thank heavens I was on this boat, because it was not good in terms of those weather conditions. So it is a big upside to having something built that substantial, that you may never want to find yourself in those situations, but the reality is, if you boat long enough, you are going to find yourself in that situation. And to have something under you that's going to be safe, is going to keep your family safe, is going to get you where you want to go, you can't put a price on that. That is, it's something that just really you can't buy. So that would be some of my sort of background into sailing with Outer Reef.
Thanks, Trevor. We're kind of at our little over our time limit here from our invite. We're welcome to stick around if any of you guys have any additional questions. One of the interesting things that I found, just as a personal observation, any of you who've come to any of our christening parties, which are a lot of fun at the boat shows, I think one of the most amazing things that Jeff says at every boat show is, now that the boat's delivered and you have our boat, we can actually start our relationship. And I think that really goes to the philosophy of the company, why resale values stay high, why we get our boats back. We've built your boat, we've got our money, and in Jeff's philosophy, that's when we start our relationship. Is really what happens after we deliver your boat, not the build process up to it. So I just thought I'd share that as a personal observation and a philosophy that he says every time, but I think it's incredibly important. And I don't think you hear that at most other boat builders, dealers, things like that. Thank you everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing everyone at our next topic, which will be on Thursday, May 21st. We'll talk about the build process, how we basically turn dreams into realities. So please register for that. And we look forward to seeing everybody in about a week. And we'll get into a little bit about after people have made the commitment to come join Outer Reef CAD and building your version of your boat. So thank you, everybody. Please reach out to us through the emails or phone or whatever medium you choose if you have any questions.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.